Which groups now?
They don't have names.
Okay, they wouldn't tell you. I mean,
They don't have names.
But as far as we know, in other words, we know about, for example, Nordics as a general category, and we know about Greys and so on and so forth, even reptilians. Have you gotten? You've gotten.
I've been contacted with all of them and come through at various times. But when I would ask them, "Where are you from?" they said, "We don't have a name from where we come from. You humans have to put labels on things.
Mm-hmm.
So if you need it, we will give you a label." But they said, if we told you we were from the planet out there to the north of the North Star, you wouldn't know which one it was because it's not even in your constellation books.
That's right.
But they don't come from planets anyway. They come from other dimensions and galaxies far, far away because they travel through dimensions.
Yes.
And so they said it wouldn't do any good to tell you where we are from. And on board the crafts are many, many different kinds, just like Star Trek.
Okay.
And I've had the little Greys, when they come through, that was one of the first ones, and they are robotic. They are manufactured beings to do the work.
Okay, and do you feel that they're building a hybrid race, let's say?
Building one or
creating one?
Well, all along, that's part of the program. That program is over now. It's been done.
Okay.
They have accumulated everything they need. But the little Greys had a different way of speaking, and you knew you were not talking to anybody you could really converse with because they were robotic sounding. But they told me later we had to show you this first so you would know what it sounded like and you would recognize the other ones. One was a very beautiful woman that came through, and she gave us a great deal of information. And she responded a lot to me during this one the book there. So I don't know if you would call her a Nordic or not. She had auburn-colored hair.
Mm-hmm.
They look human, but of course they aren't human because the organs have been changed. They can. They don't consume food, but they said the breathing mechanism, for instance, can handle any kind of gas in any atmosphere they find themselves in, except for a sulfuric acid. So they are developed their body can take anything,
mm-hmm.
and they don't have to eat because they travel.
Well, when you're actually regressing individuals, so you have various ET races coming through these individuals.
They are
Isn't
the
that
ones
right?
that are working on the person, and while they're doing it, they say, "All right, I'll talk to you for a little bit," and they'll start telling me things. The one who was the female with the auburn hair was a doctor
mm-hmm.
on board the craft, and she said, "It's not a doctor as you think of a doctor. It's a doctor, they work on energies."
Mm-hmm.
And this is why they would explain what they were doing.
Okay, but you're also doing therapy on the person themselves, right?
Yes.
And so you're talking to the ETs and you're dealing with the person. So your subject matter has to also relate to that human being that the ET's coming through, isn't that right?
Because they will explain what they have done to the person, why they have done it, and then by the time the person wakes up, they'll say, "Well, if that's what happened, I can live with it." Most of the other therapists work in the emotional level, just only frightening because they don't understand what's really happening. They told me the ideal situation should be that the person never remember anything about the experience, because they have been coming since the beginning of the earth, taking care of humans since the beginning of the earth. And they don't want to interfere with the individual's life. We should, because of free will, we should be allowed to just live and experience life as we know it. Not supposed to interfere with it. But they said because the chemistry of the brain has changed, the pollutants in the air, the additives to the food, if the person is on drugs of any kind, recreational or medical drugs, if they are drinking on alcohol, it changes the chemistry of the brain.
Mm-hmm.
Thus, when the person remembers an experience, they don't remember it all. Usually it's parts of an experience or a dream. They are remembering the experience in a distorted fashion. So it's not correct. And that's why they're scared. They think they've been raped. They think all kinds of horrible things have happened to them. And this is what the ET community, UFO community, they exploit that. They have speakers come and talk about all the horrible things that were done to them. Well, I can have the same person that somebody else has got this horrible story from. I do them, we get a totally different story. Because we find out what really happened. And it's not at all what they thought it was. Because of the chemistry of the brain filters the experience. That makes a difference.
Okay. And perhaps you are also, because you're the receiver, right, on a certain level, so you have a certain openness to accept whatever might come, rather than to preconceive or have a...
But see the therapy for the person. Some of them are afraid to go out of their house after they work with other therapists. They're afraid to go anywhere because they're afraid to go to sleep. And when you find out what really happened, that's therapy. And that's what I work with.
Okay, but you're working with MyLab individuals that have been military abductions. You're familiar with
I've
that?
never done the military abduction.
You've never had
I've never
any
had, in
exposure with that?
25 years, I've never had anyone that
Interesting.
had anything to do with the military. Other people say they have, but it's interesting that mine have never been that way.
Okay.
It's always been, they don't like the word abductions. They prefer to call it visitations. It's always been people that had problems, and they had partial memories, and they knew something had happened. They had missing time, and condensed time is much more exciting than missing time.
Okay, so let's talk about the future of the Earth and what kind of waves have been coming, because there have been, you know, there are people on the planet, as you mentioned in your lecture, and I think a lot of people can go online and get other lectures that you've done and so on and so forth. But why don't we talk about the waves and then what's coming in the future?
Because I have found everything from how the Earth was created to how they began life, and they did begin life and start us. And they've watched over us all the time, all the way through. But it's interesting that I've never found the military abductions.
Yes.
The military might be involved, but I haven't worked with those kind of people. But let's go back a minute. You were talking about the different races. I've had many different ones come through. Some of them you wouldn't even recognize. They're not any pictures you've ever seen. But they're able to communicate because it's mind to mind, but they speak through the person I'm working with.
Sure.
And I have information that I can tell you that you wouldn't believe, but you want to focus on this other.
Well, okay, we'll be happy to hear some of the information I wouldn't believe, if that's what you think.
Well, whatever. I don't know where you want to go.
Yeah, well, I'd like you to talk about, because you started off, you kind of ended your lecture yesterday, basically with the 3 waves and then the future of the planet, and then we can kind of go back to some other things after that.
There's one part, can I say it before I forget it?
Sure.
Because I had one that was on a craft that happened off the California coast, and she was taken out. The car and all was taken up into the craft, and she had no memory of any of this. But when the person, the ET, came through, was explaining what was happening while they were working on her, he was saying that with their minds, the big eyes they have, and I was wondering how they see. He said, from where I am now, they were in the craft over the highway. He said, we can see all the way out to the ocean. We can see all the way back into the mountains. We can see all the way down either side of the highway. And we can see all the people in the little boats and all the people in the cars on the highway and all the people in the houses all at the same time. That's how they perceive.
Wonderful.
It's not at all the way we would think it.
That's right.
And they see what they're thinking. And when they were with the person, the little grays were all crowded around her giggling, and they said, you know what they're looking at? And I said, no. They said they're watching all of the veins, how the blood is flowing through the veins. They could see inside of her, and how all the little things were working with the brain, and the fluids were operating in the body. They could see all of that by looking inside the person's body. It's not at all what you think it is.
I understand.
That's the kind of thing I find fascinating anyway.
Uh-huh.
Okay, But with the three waves, you've got to understand that they created life on Earth.
I understand
They
that.
have been taking care of us since the beginning of time. Therefore, they monitor everything that we do. They watch us constantly because we are part of the records that go into the history book in the council. They have histories of every planet. Everything that happens is in the history book. So they have been monitoring everything that happens on Earth all that time. And whenever something is needed for Earth, some kind of a new invention or a new energy, a new power, it is given to us.
Mm-hmm.
But yet we have free will, and they do have the directive of non-interference. You cannot interfere with a developing civilization. I know that's Star Trek, but it's not fiction, it's real.
I think that most people will actually know that because they know that we're on the brink of a complete change on the planet.
They would always give us the next thing that we needed in the growth of a civilization. And I asked them, isn't that interference? They said no, because we give it to you as a gift when you need it in that time. What you do with it is your own free will. And most of the time what they give it to us for, we don't use it. We turn it into a weapon or something negative. So I said, can't you just come back and tell the civilization you're not doing it correctly? They said, no, because that is interference.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to just watch and shake their heads. People, you have free will, you can do what you want with it, but you're not doing what we intended you to do with it. So that's what leads up to the three waves.
Okay.
Because they were monitoring us all this time, shaking their heads, thinking, what in the world are they doing with all of this? And then at the end of the World War II, 1945,